ICQ Podcast episode 293, WOLFWave Audio Processor. Well, hi everyone, welcome to this episode 293 of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, our show before our Hamvention, which we'll be heading off to in a few days' time. This episode is supported by Chuck Chivers, Victor Echo 3, Victor Sierra Alpha, and Bill Hester, November 0, Lima Alpha Juliet, along with our monthly M subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1MRB is joined by Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Dan, Kilo Bravo 6, November Uniform, to discuss latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is Martin's look at the WOLFWave Audio Processing Unit. Well, it's always our donations that keep this show advert free and, as I say, stops all these breakouts for things that are completely unrelated to amateur radio. So we'd like to thank Chuck first for his donation. And he says, I'm an avid listener to your podcast. Keep up the good work. Thanks, guys, for the excellent work. It'll be at Dayton this year, so he hopes to meet up with us. 73s for now. So I'll let you know in 2 seconds how you can spot us. Trust me, we're very easy to find. So that's Chuck, VE3, Victor Sierra Alpha. And also Bill Hester, November 0, Lima Alpha Juliet from Denver, Colorado, sent us a message. So thanks for the great show. Listen and learn while running on the treadmill twice a week at my local health club. 73s to you all. Thanks, Bill, for your donations. So those donations, along with our annual and monthly subscription donors, help keep the show advert free. Chuck mentioned catching up with us at the show. There'll be 8 of us at Dayton Hamvention this year. You'll be able to identify us very clearly by our orange polo shirts with ICQpodcast.com across the back. Feel free to stop any of the group and they'll be more than happy to have a chat with you. And as I say, it'll be great to learn more. If you catch Martin or Edmund and you want to know more about the Yaesu FTDX 101D that they reviewed a couple of weeks ago, they'll be more than happy to tell you about that as well. Any listeners who wish to actually hand us a donation at Hamvention, this does happen at shows, could you do us a favour? Could you pop the donation in an envelope with your call sign, name and any message as well for us, just so we don't lose, say, your thank you note on our trip when we come back, as I say, to make sure we pass on those thanks to you. So that'd be great. But in the meantime, anyone who's not going to the show, visit icqpodcast.com/donate. And as I say, anything you send our way to show your value for the show is greatly appreciated. One other quick mention, you might have spotted this on the ICQ Podcast newsletter. Unfortunately, the event with Howard Mickle has had to be cancelled due to a bit of a conflict in rules. But Frank is working on something to replace that at the moment. So he's going to let me know in due course what he's able to do to cover that off. Well, listen, let's go on with the show and let's join Martin, Chris, Martin, Frank and Dan to discuss the latest amateur radio news, including Radio Club helps firefighters and the importance of an Irish amateur. Hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, welcome to episode 293 of the ICQ podcast, and this episode's News Roundtable. Tonight I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH. Hi Chris.
Good evening Martin, how are you?
I'm ducking and diving as always, and a nice impersonation of Leslie there. So
that's what it was.
It was. Also can see Mr. Martin Rothwell having a good giggle, M0SGL. Hi Martin.
Do we all need to do an impersonation of Leslie? Because Frank does a pretty good one as well. Good evening, Martin.
No. Behave.
But good evening. It's nice to be here on what was it Dan called it? A remote.
Yeah. You're remote today. I'll be remote.
I'm on a remote broadcast.
Yeah, I'll be remote next time, won't I? So that'll be interesting. And we also, moving over to the States, we have Mr. Dan Rowajet, KB6NU. Hi, Dan.
Hello, guys.
And Dan...
Oh, come on, do it like Leslie does it.
Oh, I can't do that.
No. Dan's got his own sound effects. Dan's got the squeaky chair.
Go on, Dan, do that. There it is.
And last but not least, we also have Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH, I believe I've got your call sign right. Frank.
You nailed it, Governor.
I did. hey, no Dick Van Dyke impersonations. He could never do Cockney anyway. Oh dear, I'm sure we can have fun tonight.
It's Frank the Chippy Chappy. There we go.
Yeah. Anyway, Starting our first news story, a radio club lends help to firefighters. Now, this is not a US story, not a UK story, but it shows that radio hams around the world do actually take part in lots of events on this. And the Borneo Post reports that on the Malaysia-Brunei border, there's actually a peat fire going on. So, rather naughty when those peat bogs catch fire. They take a lot of putting out. Dan, do you want to go first on this one?
Well, it occurs to me that in areas like this, which are less developed countries, there's still probably a big need for amateur radio. Here in the U.S., they bring in all kinds of stuff when they have these kind of emergencies, and they usually get communications up and running pretty quickly. But maybe out here in the Brunei, Malaysia border, that's not quite the case.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And having worked with a guy from Brunei, when I was in the IT industry, he was over learning, and he was going to support the Sultan of Brunei by all accounts. There's a lot happens in different parts of the world, and Brunei got plenty of money, but when a fire kicks in, that's a bit of a frightener. What do you think, Martin?
Well, I go back to the old saying that I've said it before, and we hear it quite often: when all else fails, amateur radio. It's great that the amateurs can step in and help people out, but I still wonder why emergency services rely on repeater or network-based comms. I see the advantages of them, but they have one main disadvantage, and that's infrastructure. Essential comms, why don't they have VHF and UHF backups? If their radios already rely on a UHF repeater, we'll just put some backup channels in, or put a higher powered repeater, in this case in your works vehicle, like your fire engine or whatever. If it's more kit to carry, maybe, but if it's life saving, there is no price on that, and that includes stuff that you might have to carry. It's great for us to help out, but someone does need to rethink, because one day there might not be anyone to help you.
Yeah, well, you attended, I think, the same lecture as I did and Chris did at the Saturn Machine Club, the 999 communications, or the emergency communications, and I tell you what, that was a real eye-opener. I mean, I'm sure if the local villains had known just how poor the communications was between the police and ambulance and all that, they'd have been running riot, wouldn't they, Chris?
Well, I thought it was a great talk, actually, we had the other week from Steve about the police communications. I didn't realise there was only, back in the 90s, I think it was the 90s, when they used to use the old Stono radio system for handheld radios. They had 5 frequencies. The whole of London had 5 frequencies. How on earth that ever worked, I've no idea. So yes, they obviously made it work, but it can't be that reliable. So but back to this story. I think it's just another good use. It's just another good use of amateur radio. I think we don't know what this area is. I think, as Martin's point earlier was around infrastructure. Well, this might be a really remote place where there isn't any infrastructure or even any easy way to get there. I don't know. Never been to that part of the world, but it's great that amateur radio can help out and really help them benefit the community, as they have done. Yeah,
that's certainly good. Frank, what's your thoughts on this one? I'm going to say it's outside the US, but it certainly seems, in my opinion, worth doing.
You bet. And there are parts of the U.S. that may not be much different in terms of development than this particular area in Brunei, Malaysia. Well, there's 2 things, and I think it repeats a little bit of what the others have said. No matter where you are, the official procedures that are supposed to work, normal business, screw up. They break down. They'll always do that one way or the other in unpredictable ways. And it, secondly, reflects the nimbleness that ham radio writ large around the world has for getting on the air with maybe spit and baling wire. But it sounds like they had a pretty good repeater system and things up and going that would be the admiration of most any emergency team in the U.S. So just another story, as Martin said, amateur radio rides in to save at least part of the day.
Yeah. Well, it proves that we're still well thought of around the world, and we can help out if need be because we have the infrastructure to do it. Moving to our next news story, Arduino and RF, and this is from kilohertz to 1 gigahertz. There's a new board just come out called the RF0, Looks like it's an experimenter's board. Frank, you've already emailed the guy. What do you think?
I'm very, very impressed, and let me nuance, that it's, as I said in our pre-air discussion, it's sort of a Swiss Army knife development board, but it has some things that at least most other boards don't have, and it's got GPS, RF, filtering, the ability to leverage the Arduino platform, and it can go in a lot of different directions, none the least of which is a GPS discipline oscillator to give your bench equipment or any test scenario that you have a fairly reliable 10 megahertz signal. So I emailed the guy, and he sent me back a nice little email very, very quickly, and it's about $43 plus FedEx shipping, about 1 week to the States. And so not a bad price point. I think it could leverage the maker culture and kind of the build, and let's leverage this. I think in a year from now, 2 years from now, who knows what we built on top of this platform. So I'm very, very positive.
Yeah, certainly sounds interesting. Dan, the cat was let out the bag earlier that you've been playing with Arduinos. What would you think of this device?
Well, at first I thought, this is just another board. But, as Frank points out, it's got the ability to be GPS disciplined, which is kind of a nice feature. It's got a wider bandwidth than most of these boards. So, could be a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah. Well, I say, I get quite excited. Chris, I look at this and I think, this is the sort of thing youngsters coming into our hobby kind of would want to use, I would suggest.
So, from my perspective, I mean, it's incredible that you got a device so cheap that's got so much technology built into it. GPS receiver, the fact you can send RF from a really wide range of frequencies. And it only takes someone to find a really killer use for this, a really killer application, like I think Dan was suggesting earlier about maybe a really stable clock or something that's really useful, and they'll sell lots and lots of them. And even if they don't, this is still a really useful development tool, really useful for education, and people want to learn about lots of different things. So, I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, right. Let's say, I've been played with Arduinos a little bit myself. I'm quite excited about this. Martin, have you played with any Arduino stuff?
Arduinos, no. I'd love to. I mean, we always talk about the Arduinos and the Raspberry Pis being like the BBC Micros of today. Loads of people that have never heard of a BBC Micro going to Google them. It's a computer from the 80s. But I know that Arduinos are very, very versatile boards, and this just looks like another great piece of kit to add to the collection of things to play with. I don't know everything. I don't know or understand. I'm not even going to pretend to understand everything that it can do. But this is something that I will learn more about. I always want to do more of this kind of thing, but my work and stuff, I don't always get to find the time. And then, of course, by the time I actually find the time to do something new's come out that I want to play with as well, and it's a never-ending circle. So one day I'll get there, maybe not yet, but $43 as well. That's the price point for it. That's realistic. If you'd have told me this was a £100 board, I'd have believed you, but wouldn't have spent any money on it. $43, would I spend that? Yeah, probably I would. So very approachable now.
Yeah, $43 is about £35, Martin. So it's not bad. Yeah, seeing this that store that used to sell electronics in the high street used to sell a basic Arduino board for nearly that sort of money before they went into or left the high street, put it that way. Make this attractive. Moving on, RM11828 Technician Enhancement Update. Now this is a thing that the ARRL and the FCC are still communicating on. Dan, you said you haven't blogged on this one yet, but I would suggest we might get one soon.
Well, so this is just this was kind of an odd news story from the ARRL. The proposal is up for comments, and it's almost as if they're saying, well, no, we don't like the comments you guys are making. Here's what you should be saying. And according to one of my co-bloggers here in the U.S., he says it kind of smacks a little bit of desperation, like the comments aren't going their way, so they've got to try and drum up some good comments. And it does a little bit. Whether this thing passes or not, I still don't think it's going to be a big deal. But I don't know. This is just kind of an odd announcement from that aspect.
Yeah, well, we talked loosely about the fact that it does talk about asking the FCC for some voice usage for technicians in the HF band and a few other things, but you seem to say that you didn't think that was going to make much difference to a technician anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. And, you know, the one comment that keeps floating around here is, you know, people don't see how this is going to encourage technicians to upgrade. Giving them more privileges doesn't seem like the way to encourage them to upgrade.
Right. Well, yeah, I didn't do one of your Tech Day courses, and I know you're doing one in Dayton this Saturday coming, the start of Dayton. So, you know, anybody who wants to do tech could look at this. But, yeah, the rules keep changing. Frank, what do you think on this one?
To some degree, it's a solution in search of a real problem. Now, what I've heard the ARL say is we have a lot of technicians that have come into the hobby. And if you look at the license data, Dan, I don't remember the exact number, but there's a significant dominance of the technician license in the overall ham pool.
It's over 50%.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I thank you for kind of confirming my remembrance.
Yep.
So, okay, we've got these here. They're stagnant in the sense that, you know, they're not moving up, or at least many of them don't seem to be. Now, is this going to get them to move up? I tend to feel like Dan does. If you give them a lot of these privileges, why would they want to move up? Now, there have been technicians I've known who have been lifelong techs. They run repeaters. They've been president of clubs, and, you know, nobody looks down their nose at them because they'll drop a microwave dish on them if they do, usually, or they won't do the repeaters anymore. And so, you know, to some degree, it's a status thing, but I just don't see the real need. I would have given some of what they're giving, but on fewer bands or what have you. We could go on and on about it, but my view is I don't think there was enough open discussion. And by open, I mean outside the ARL board. They would have heard a lot of these comments before they did the rulemaking. Because I will say that my next point is that every time the ARL goes for rulemaking at the FCC and they get blasted by the rank and file hams, what's the implication to the FCC? You really don't speak for all hams, do you? And as Dan has written about and we've talked about, they have 150,000 some odd members out of 750,000 some odd licenses. So I don't want to bash ARL too hard. I just think they should have aired this out maybe a little more. And yet I'm not against what they're doing. It might have been a little more limited, but that's my 2 cents at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think the hobby's changing all the time. And I do take your point of if there's no real reason to move up, then why would you? Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I can't really comment too much on the technician privileges. I know that in the US, the restriction is around frequencies, and you know, the technician, whether you're a technician, a general, or an extra, you get the full 1.5 kilowatts of RF, which is very different to the way it works here in the UK. In the UK, we give most, so we have a similar. So we have, you know, foundation, intermediate, and full licenses. It's roughly equivalent to the 3 tiers in the US. But rather than restrict it by frequency, we restrict it by power. Although there are some restrictions, you do get slightly more frequencies the higher your license. But I know that with the technician, you only get a certain part of the band, and that expands as your license privileges increase. I think it's interesting that we've taken 2 different approaches because, you know, here in the UK, you can get, you know, you sometimes hear a foundation license holder, and you know they're not running 10 watts, but you can't prove that because unless you're actually sat in that person's shack, looking at that person's equipment at that time, there's no way to prove whether or not that person's running 10 watts. But you kind of know they're not. Whereas in the States, with a technician license, you know that person is or isn't operating within their privileges because if they're not on that, if they're in a frequency they shouldn't be on, you can prove that. So I think that's an interesting difference. But I'm not sure which is the right answer. I'm not sure which is the most right way of doing it. I kind of like I think this is the UK system where you've got that restriction on RF. I think it's there for safety. and also to prevent interference. I'm kind of in two minds as to which is the right way to restrict people. I guess here in the UK, when any ham, whether you're a technician, a foundation or a full license holder, can use any of the digital modes. There's nothing stopping someone using the FT8 or any because the frequencies are available to them. So I suppose in that respect, does that give them an incentive to move on? I mean, some people are foundation license holder, never have any need to never want to have any more power. They're quite happy to run on 10 watts. They're quite happy to only operate within the UK. So I don't know. Do you make it so difficult for people, that they want to? Obviously, we all want to advance to the next, to the next level. But do we actually really want to make it that difficult that they give up, sort of thing? You know what I mean? So it's kind of a difficult one for me, really.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But if you look at it, you guys in the States are both extras. I hold an extra in the States.
I'm actually only a general. I'm a lowly general.
I don't believe that. I think you're winding me up.
I am, and I didn't mention that in my comments, Martin, but I've been a ham not quite 10 years, and I've just been busy enjoying ham radio, and there hasn't been I'm not a big DXer, and so the bandwidth for DX would be a good thing, and I will get my extra. I just hadn't put it on my to-do list and done it. I need to get one of Dan's books and study it.
I'll give you one of my books.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
But no, I'm actually, and I tease some of my perhaps less advanced friends that I'm just a lowly general.
There's no such thing as a lonely general, Frank. And no, fair enough. And I would have
Careful, he'll
never
want
guessed.
everyone to start calling him General Frank and saluting him.
Nailed it, General.
Yeah. But in fairness, the guys in the States, you've gone all the way through the full license as well. Hey, we did it for a reason. Now, I understand. Now, I wasn't aware, Frank, but I understand why you haven't done it, because you're a busy man. You're a very busy man. And as long as you enjoy the hobby, that's the important thing. But I kind of think that we enjoy the hobby. We've pushed ourselves forward to get the full license, haven't we? Martin?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the reason I upgraded my license to the full license, one, it's something I'd always wanted to do. It was an ambition of mine. I did it. And two, it was purely and simply because I wanted more power. The reason I wanted more power is because I wanted to play with HF, and 10 watts on HF with a limited garden space, put aerials up, means you're not going to get very far on HF. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying it's much harder. Whereas 100 watts on HF makes a lot of difference. Now, obviously, we talk about, you get 1.5 kilowatts or whatever in America. And of course, relating to safety, I guess the training that you get given will include that, whereas ours probably won't. So yeah, it will differentiate from which country you're in, and you're learning for that license for the place you're going to operate. What are they trying to achieve by changing things? More phone privileges on HF. Well, if you want that, then upgrade your license. We talk about what gives you the incentive to move up to the next license grade if they're just going to give it all to you anyway. Good point, but if the powers that be they the ARRL, the FCC, whoever, want to do that, then put a time limit on, how long you can have your tech license before you have to upgrade. Yes, that's a controversial comment, and I know that, and I apologise for it in advance. But if that's what you're trying to achieve, get the job done. Although it's also counterproductive because it may scare some people off who might not get their license in the first place. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I suppose.
That's actually the way the novice license used to be. When I was a kid, you had 1 year. I forget when they switched from 1 year to 2 years, but you had at the most 2 years. And if you hadn't upgraded by then you lost your license.
Let me throw this in, and I don't know that the league is considering this, but one of the things that's changed from the era of the novice license is that radio frequency bandwidth has more of a dollar factor attached to it. Broadband and changing in television has kind of brought that in.
Oh, yes.
So if you're the league, do you want to have fewer, more elite hams, if you will, or a lot of ham? Some of which, as Dan said, half of them are in the lowest category. So if you're kind of the advocacy group, you got more to advocate for if you've got 750,000 hams heading toward 1 million at some point soon. So, there's a little bit of that context to perhaps what the league's perspective is. Just guessing.
Yeah, the only thing about that is they're giving them more HF privileges, and I don't think our HF frequencies are that much at risk.
Well, may not. Make sure you know what the military's doing.
Well, I know, I say that too. I mean, say let's not get complacent about it, but yeah, if anything, it's the higher frequencies at this point.
Well, I kind of feel that I've probably wasted my time getting anything other than a technician license, because I can't use my US call sign outside of the US unless I'm on US soil, and I've had it now nearly 7 years. This is my first trip to the States in about 2 weeks' time, and guess what I'm bringing with me? A 2 meter 70 cents handy talkie. So which I'm not going to go on HF. So I could have got a technician license, couldn't I? Really? Let's be honest.
We'll just use the SEPT agreement.
Yeah.
Well, but we all know that Dan's doing some sort of, so you never know. You might work HF.
Listen, but here's a question, and I just don't know the answer. So it's a true question. Could you operate a remote station in the States with your U.S. call sign?
I'm not sure.
That.
That's a good question.
Something like that.
That's a good question.
And I honestly don't know the answer.
Or D-Star or Fusion or DMR when you're coming out another part of the world. I don't think anyone dare. I don't think the regulator. I don't think anyone dare ask them, because they might have to actually decide. I don't know.
But if the RF is transmitted, because Martin, your phrase U.S. soil, the transmitter, it would be on U.S. soil, transmitter and receiver. Your audio would be across the pond.
But you put that into another context. I mean, okay, if you're going in, say, through the internet in the UK, and you're not going in via a repeater, where in the UK you'd be required to use your UK call sign. If you go out on D-Star whatever, you could use. What call sign would you use? Whether because it's going out on RF out there, you could do that now.
So I think. Well, I mean, it's okay. Well, I suppose similarly, so imagine I've got a foundation license here in the UK, and I'm operating 10 watts, and I work through a repeater in the UK, which is only a local repeater, but that repeater runs 25 watts. Well, can I do that? Well, I think the answer is you can, because it's the repeater's call sign, it's the repeater's license that you're using that's got those privileges. So if you're coming out in the States, I don't quite know if the rules are the same over there, but I believe the repeaters have got their own call sign license, so therefore using its license rather than yours to send the RF.
But the other thing, of course, is if your RF is only going out in America and it's not going out anywhere, one, it's licensed by the repeater keeper, but your call sign is strictly, should you be using an American call sign before you're going out on American equipment?
Let's stay on the HF side.
Allowed to?
So let's stay on the HF side. Let's say I've got a flex radio, or I've got another radio that uses, I think MFJ sells this remote Pi product now that's a Raspberry Pi, and it's you're on the internet, voice over IP, until you get to U.S. soil. Then you hit the transceiver. That was the thing I was throwing out there for Martin, because he's got a U.S. call sign. Would there be any reason that you can think of that you couldn't do that and use your U.S. call sign?
Well, the only thing I could think of is the concept of the control point, right?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I mean, I don't know either, but that's.
But what if you were doing it, Dan? What if you were doing, where you were accessing my station the same way?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have that control either. I mean, that physical control.
Well, when you operate, say, for example, in the UK, if we're driving from England into Wales, you have to put an extra, is it the W you put in your call sign as you drive across the border, because you've gone into that part of the country. When you guys go across America, do you have to change your call sign as well?
No. It used to be you had to put a slash and then the number of the call district that you were then in. So if I was, my original call was WBA-KTZ. If I drove into Indiana, which is an adjoining state, I would then have to sign WBA-KTZ/9, because 9 is the call district that Indiana.
I would say wherever the transmitter is, you are operating in that country in the same way that there is nothing in reality to stop Colin operating Martin's home station remotely if he had that set up. Where the person is, I think, is irrelevant. It's where the transmitter is that is where effectively it is licensed.
I was coming on to that, Martin. You're right, right, and you're definitely wrong. Because I remember somebody sending us an email when I talked about I'd set my TS590 up for remote access, so Colin could technically use it. And another ham wrote to me and said, "You realise that's in contravening the licensing, because Foundation license holders are not allowed to use remote stations."
What about Echolink?
Well,
that's a remote station.
Yeah, but
repeaters, that's a remote station.
Hey?
Repeaters also remote.
Yeah, well, you're not supposed
But I mean, there's nothing to say that Colin couldn't put Echolink on his phone or on his laptop and access an Echolink enabled repeater in the UK because his license is in the UK. Again, he's in that sense, he's not operating the transmitter.
I was told, reminded that the licensing is that it shouldn't happen. When we mentioned that we were going to give him access to mics.
Hey, I got an idea.
If you asked Ofcom, they would probably say, I don't know.
I got an idea here. Why don't you try it, Martin, and then see if the FCC comes down on you?
Yeah, get me into trouble. After I've had 3 cups of coffee and I'm ready for the fight, Dan, yeah.
When he gets back from America, not before. They'll arrest him at the gate.
We want him to come in.
Martin, in lieu of our cancellation of our other mini event, I'm going to bring my portable FT891, a little vertical rig, and late on Friday night, when we get you all coffeed up after we have a group dinner, we're going to let you use your call sign on HF in America.
That'll be great, Frank. That'll be great. The guys don't know what they're up for.
You can pick one of 23 channels, Martin.
Thank you. Right. Okay. Well, we've gone way off topic, and I hope, guys, this was of interest to you. Moving on, there's a first new air test of FreeDV 2020. Now, looks like this is a new version of FreeDV, the digital software. And it looks like it's really improved the audio. And Dan, you seem to think that you weren't that impressed with it before because the audio was pretty poor.
Right, and I haven't watched the video, unfortunately, yet. But if he's improved the video, then I think, or audio, I mean, then it will be a very it'll help its adoption. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, let's say they're saying that they can get an 8K audio bandwidth into 1.6 kilohertz RF bandwidth. So some interesting digital jiggery-pokery going on there. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Well, I like this. I mean, I like the whole idea of digital voice on HF. It's something I've always wanted to play with. I've seen videos before. I know there's an AOR box that has done that for a while. Whether people still use them or even they're still available, I don't know. But there's also a video of a guy in Australia, Michael, VK5ZEA, I think, and he's playing with a mic, a Rotel mic, I think, on air. And the concept of that and the way it sounded and seemed to worked really well. And it's something I've always wanted to play with. But, you look at any frequencies that are supposed to be used for digital HF or anything, I've never, ever heard anything on there. And until I even hear some data on there that I could potentially decode with my SDR Play or something like that, I'm not going to go and invest in a mic or any time installing the software and trying to get it working or anything like that.
But I think that these things, this is where innovation comes, isn't it? I think, a few people playing with something initially, it's quite niche and it's something that's not very common. And suddenly, a bit like SSB, I'm sure SSB, when it was first developed, and I'm sure they went through different iterations of modulation techniques to land on that, and what we nowadays call SSB. And now everyone's got it in everything, and HF-wise. And I'm fairly sure that in 20 or 30 years' time, every rig will have in it some sort of digital mode for voice. And whether it's this or something that's a future revision of this will be there.
They got decided on the standard first, haven't they?
Yes, the fact this is an open thing, which is obviously, I believe it is anyway, is a great thing. But I've listened to I watched the video earlier, and actually it's pretty impressive that on the video. I'm sure Colin will put a link to it on the website on ICQpodcast.com. Yeah, you can the guy that starts off by doing somebody sending SSB, and it's a little bit crackly, and you can just about hear the guy okay, but it's a little bit crackly, and you can hear most of what he was saying. And then he flips over to this new FreeDV 2020, and it's a different world. So yeah, it is actually really impressive. So I think currently it's fairly niche, like you say. If you're just listening around, you're probably not going to hear it. You also need to schedule a contract with someone to do it, but watch this space. I think this has got a future, and at some point we're going to start seeing this sort of thing in rigs. Certainly SDRs, software-defined radios where you got a PC where it's just software. It should be fairly easy to implement. Obviously, in hardware-based transceivers, obviously that's a bit more work, but I think this is probably the future.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chris. But the thing is, if you don't, you're saying, Mark, if you don't hear anybody, but it's like the old story. If you ain't transmitting, nobody's going to come back to you. It's a bit like
yeah.
You know what it's like. You can sit on the calling channel and listen all day in London on 2-minute calling channel. You and I have a 2-minute conversation on the calling channel, and the whole of London wakes up and tells you to get off it. So,
I mean, I'm just thinking from the point of view of the cost of it at the moment. I'm not going to go and spend a lot of money investing in hardware that does it. Yeah, okay, it's FreeDV is software you can install on your computer. Perhaps if I had more time, I might be inclined to install it and have a bit more of a play with it. With limited time at the moment, because I don't have enough time to do half the stuff I'm trying to do. Maybe my priorities are better spent doing that than trying to get FreeDV software that might not have anybody on it. But if people are using this stuff, I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch with us.
Yeah. So, Frank, you've been very quiet. Have you had a go at this FreeDV?
I have not. Now, I have watched the development of FreeDV because, it is a key part of, some of the Ford versus Chevrolet automobile debates, as we would talk about here in the States. Let me make 2 quick points about it. I could be wrong on this, but from memory, I don't recall anyone else using a neural net speech synthesis algorithm. And as a statistician, neural networking is a statistical procedure that optimizes variables on the left and variables on the right. So you say something from your transmitter, how is it received, in the receiver? And so I could be dead wrong on this, but where I'm seeing this be innovative, we always put single sideband automatic gain control on slow as a rule. That's kind of what, good operating procedure is. And why do we do that? Well, because sideband's going to vary. And in this little thing, if you're talking about single sideband armchair copy, you may get a signal to noise ratio better than TB or 10 dB and slow fading. Well, imagine that you've got an automatic AGC that you don't have to worry about the setting because it's going to read some stuff and it's going to adjust it to maintain a certain criterion. Now, that's not a literal thing that is what's going. But if you compare, say, Yaesu's C4FM Fusion, they're using forward error correction to keep those packets in line. They brag that gives you a little bit better voice quality than, say, D-Stars. Whether it does or not, it's open to debate. But I think this is the real innovation in what they have done here is going toward the neural net synthesis technology to kind of automate cleaning up the origin and destination matching of those characteristics. That's one thing. The second thing, Martin's comment, I think all of us that, don't have unlimited funds can certainly agree with. Who's going to go run out and buy a $5,000 transceiver because somebody put FreeDV in it? This is where the SDRs have a distinct advantage. And I think Chris kind of mentioned that. Why? Most of that stuff is not physical, it's software. So changing the software can allow you to implement this. Flex has already implemented a version of FreeDV earlier. So I hope they'll kind of get this in the tab here, because once we get something that is the equivalent of FM versus AM in the broadcast world with voice, there will be a big upside toward a emerging standard.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing how this one goes, and I think you're right, Frank. It's an improvement. It's an interesting technology, and let's hope they do well with it. So I rather hope they do, and we start to see more digital voice on HF. Our last news story, and I put this one in. I came across this purely by accident, but radio experimenter with Colonel Dennis EI2B. And you say to me, well, so what? Well, he's an Irish call sign. Unfortunately, the gentleman became a silent key in 1945. But it says here, he started experimenting with radio in 1898, well over 100 years ago. And they're suggesting that he could have been one of the first, if not the first, amateur experimenter in the world. And they've published a lot of his handwritten notes and bits and pieces. Now, Dan, we talked about this. There's some super blogging material here, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've never heard of this gentleman before, but it will be interesting to see what he was experimenting with and compare it to some of the stuff that people here in the U.S. or Great Britain were doing at the time or a little bit later.
Yeah, well, I read the one of the books that was released earlier in the year, the radio manual by Collins, and he was one of the guys at Collins Radio, and that to me was very interesting of what people were doing years and years ago. But I've had a good look through this. There's lots of handwritten notes of some of the things he was up to. So anybody who's doing any history research, well worth a look. Martin, have you managed to have a look?
I haven't as yet, but this does sound like some pretty awesome reading. If he's been experimenting since, 18, whatever it was, I mean, was he Marconi's lab partner, I wonder? I forget when radio really came about, but sounds like some awesome reading. And so being that I'm away with work at the moment, sitting in a hotel, I think I've found some reading material for my trip away at the moment.
Yeah. As I say, it's good historical stuff. Chris, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's 1898 is a very long time ago, and I know that the various national societies have, I think the RFTB started in 1913. ARL, I think, was maybe slightly later. I think the Australians were slightly earlier. So this is a good 15 or so years before amateur radio had even in societies to do with it. So he's obviously a real trailblazer, and it was just amazing that we haven't heard him before, I suppose. I guess we've heard of Marconi, etc. I guess he's obviously very commercially astute and very commercially successful, whereas this chap, I assume, was in the army. If he was a colonel, perhaps didn't have that aspect of things, and was just interested to sort of experiment. So yeah, very interesting to learn of someone doing radio so early.
Well, we don't know how much of his work originally was covered by the Official Secrets Act or the Irish equivalent. So
that's true.
But certainly being a military man and living at the times he did, would have probably made this very interesting. Frank, I know you love history and this sort of thing. So what do you think?
Well, I'm very, very impressed with the story, and I think it should be familiar to hams everywhere. I mean, these beginnings are important. Operating from a point of geographic ignorance, even though I consider myself a GIS specialist, where is County Wicklow? What would I recognize as being near it?
It's just south of Dublin, from what I remember.
Okay.
From what I remember, Frank.
Well, it sounds to me like there ought to be further reading and study, but there ought to be a monument there and a Colonel Meade Dennis Award for pioneers. I think there's a whole lot of kind of culture in ham radio fodder for this particular thing. I mean, over here, who loves Hiram, Dan? I mean, Hiram's our daddy. Who's your daddy? Hiram, Percy Maxim. And so in a way, Colonel Meade Dennis may well occupy that space, certainly in Ireland, because he's clearly one of the pioneers.
Yeah.
Well, so Frank, did you say he was in Wicklow?
Well, what the story said, it says he's lived near Baltinglass County Wicklow?
Because I can give you some more on this. I doubly take my hat off to him if he was experimenting in Wicklow. And the only reason I say this is because a few years back we were trying to get an internet provider or an internet line into someone in Wicklow, and the telecom companies over there, they'd taken away ISDN, which is why we were trying to go down internet. We couldn't get broadband internet in there. And even the 3 and 4G providers said we cannot get a signal into certain parts of Wicklow purely and simply because of the high hills and the high terrain all the way around it. So if he's experimenting in Wicklow, and if it's the same place that I'm thinking of, then he made his work a lot harder because of that, I think.
Wow. Well, I certainly plan to read the archive and review the website. It's about 400 pages of correspondence and notes. And Martin, you know me well. I love that kind of stuff. And so I think there's a lot for us to study and read. This is kind of exciting.
Certainly is. And I don't remember much about Wicklow. I actually drove through it probably about, well, my grandson's 17 and he wasn't born then, probably about 20 years ago. We drove up from Waterford to Dublin up the back roads, went through the Wicklow Mountains, and I remember the Guinness estate is in Wicklow, or just round the corner from there. So the family estate. So
we now have millions of followers who will want to know about this.
All right. Well, I'm going from memory, so if I've got it wrong, I apologise. But lovely part of the country, and it was a thoroughly nice drive that day. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
This will be in the show notes, so we're good reading.
Yeah. So certainly go and have a look at this website. It's well worth a read. Right, well, that concludes the news stories. Let's find out what you've been up to over the last few weeks. Martin, you're sat in a hotel room. Have you managed to do any radio recently?
Sort of. I had a little bit of a chat with a couple of people on XP the other day, just to put myself on the air more than anything else. A little bit of network radio, just walking to and from the bus stop. Work. Yes, I know it's not real radio, but I still enjoy it. Otherwise, not a lot. I brought a handheld with me, but where I am, I'm on the ground floor of a hotel. There are big buildings either side of me, and there are planes flying over the roof of the building at probably no more than 100 feet above me, because we are just at the end of Heathrow's runway. So I'm not getting very much signal out at all at the moment. The best I can do for saying that I'm operating is I'm currently operating on 2.6 gigahertz via a mobile phone mast, wherever it may be from here. So that's about as much as I've been on the air as in any way, shape or form at the minute.
Right. Okay. Well, I take it you haven't done any broadcast then recently either.
No, I was on the radio probably about a month ago, so I do the shifts as and when they need me to cover, but no, I've not been on broadcast radio in a while, but I'm sure it won't be long before they phone me up and say, hey, can you go and do some work for once?
Yeah. Well, that's good. Frank, what have you been up to radio-wise, apart from having your special event station cancelled?
Well, pushing, several things about an inch further down the road. Still building battery boxes. I'm up to my 120 amp hour big boy boxes, and kind of doing designs, trying to put a little remote capability so that if you're at your operating station, you don't have to go look and see where your battery is, given you don't want to discharge it below 50% if you can help it. So there's some Bluetooth and Wi-Fi options. Getting those nailed down. I probably won't get those done before Dayton. Pushing some more APRS out, and Bob Berninga, who developed APRS, has got some somewhat exciting new features, he says, he'll be talking about in Dayton, so I hope to hear his talk. I'm trying to make sure our APRS infrastructure is back on better stead. Doing a review of the Zygu X5105. There have been rumors by a guy named Wayne Tunstall over in your neck of the woods that there's a new firmware coming out. We've been waiting 3 weeks, and so I held my review up to get the new firmware, and I don't think it's coming out. So I'm going to try to finish that before Dayton. And got a Cushcraft D4 that's a rotatable dipole that kind of a beam-looking driven element, but I'm going to put that in my attic and it's pointed directly broadside to you guys, pointed directly toward the United Kingdom. So that'll go up as part of my shack, and I'll do a little review of that. So that's about it.
Yeah, sounds good to me, mate. Sounds good to me. You've been very busy. Dan, have you been up to anything, or are you just getting ready for your new course you're teaching in a couple of weeks' time?
Well, so I've been getting the updated general class study guide all together. And in fact, I just uploaded the Kindle version to Amazon this morning. So that should go live here pretty soon. But I've also been doing some DMR, actually, which has been kind of interesting. One of the vendors of DMR radios here in the U.S. has hired me to do some blogging for him. So I've been learning about DMR and then writing about it. I wrote about how to do a code plug and all about the digital contacts list. What's that all about, and how to get the latest list. Out. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's been interesting, and I've got a little handheld here I keep on while I'm working. And yesterday, a guy from Switzerland popped up on the Michigan Talk group of all places, and we had a nice little chat. So it's been an interesting experience so far.
Yeah, sounds good, Dan. Sounds good. Looks like you've been really, really busy on that. Chris, I've left you till last because you and I usually do the same sort of things, don't we?
Kind of. A couple of things I've not been doing with you. So, last few days I've been playing with. There's a new version of SDR Uno, which is the software for the SDR player, software-defined receiver. So I've been playing with that. It came out in March, so I've been about a little while, but it's now got some scanning capabilities. It's actually really, really good. I've been playing with it quite a bit.
Looks great.
Yeah, so been playing with that and talking about DMR. So I've also been playing with DSD Plus, which is some software that actually Martin Rothwell introduced me to a while ago. I did a talk on SDRs a while ago at the club, and so I'm playing with DSD Plus to decode DMR using my SDR player device. And what's good is it shows you lots of information you don't get if you're using, say, a handheld or a transceiver for DMR. So it shows you the talk groups. You can see what's going on. So I'm sort of using it as a way to learning a bit more about how DMR works, because I'm still confused about DMR. So it's showing me things like the talk grid, the slot, and the talk grid, and all that sort of thing on the screen as someone's talking is actually quite a useful way to try and figure out what's going on. So that's what I'm playing with. Tomorrow night we've got our AGM at the Radio Club, so I'm preparing for that. We need to have a little election for the committee, and as a secretary I have to deal with all that, so that's coming up. And of course we're looking forward to our trip next weekend to Dayton, so kind of getting prepared for that. I haven't packed the bags or anything yet. I was saying to the guys earlier, probably done that before, but yeah, really, really looking forward to that, and looking forward to meeting some of our listeners out there. We're wearing our orange t-shirts. We will be. Well, I agree with you. We got our club meeting tomorrow. It's the AGM. We may not be elected committee members tomorrow, Chris. Oh, if only. Yeah, okay.
yeah. I mean, I might not be chairman.
Yeah.
Overruled.
Eh?
Overruled.
Yeah. Well, I threatened if I didn't pay my club membership, then I could get out, and Martin said he was going to pay it.
Myself and Neil pulled our wallets out of our pocket.
That's an easy one, Martin. You just get donors to handle that.
Yeah.
There you go.
He tried to get out of paying, so he didn't have to be chairman. Like, if you're not paid up, you can't be an elected member. Okay, we'll pay up for him.
Yeah. Anyway,
he hadn't had his coffee at that point.
No, that was true. Anyway, what else been up to? Well, I've actually done a little bit of HF, not a tremendous amount, but been playing with the on HF, mainly 20 and 40. I did do the 60 meter mod to my IC703. So it's the 60 meter mod on an ICOM 703 means it's totally wide banded and it can transmit everywhere between about 1.8 megs and 54 megs, I think it is. So I've got to be a little bit careful, but I have got 60 meters available now on that rig. Chris and I were on HMS Belfast a couple of weeks ago, and we were playing with the little WOLFWave, which is in the feature this episode. And lastly, but not least, a couple of weeks ago, we released the the Yaesu video, which has done quite well both on YouTube and our downloads. So, yeah, it was quite an interesting video to put out. And we are looking forward to ending up in Dayton in a couple of weeks' time, where there'll be 8 out of the 11 ICQ presenters. Well, 8 out of 12 if we count Mrs. B, who turns up occasionally. And if you see us, come and talk to us. If I've had too much coffee, one of the other presenters will keep me under control. So it's all right. It's all right. I don't bite people's heads off. No, but seriously, though, guys, if you fancy coming and talking to us, please, we'd love to talk to you. And I say, look forward to meeting you out in Dayton. So that's pretty much it, isn't it, boys? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah,
It is.
Yeah. So anyway, I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard M0TCH.
Cheers, Martin, and cheers, guys. It's been another interesting and entertaining evening.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell M0SGL.
Very welcome. It's good fun to be here on my remote.
On your remote. Mr.
Remote
Dan Romanick.
broadcast.
Eh?
A remote broadcast.
Yeah, your remote broadcast. And Mr. Dan Romanick, KB6NU.
Hey, I'm looking forward to meeting all you guys in person.
Yeah, I think it'll be real fun. And as I say, I'm really looking forward to it. And last but not least, Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH.
You nailed it once again, Governor. And look, we'll try not to set any peat bogs on fire near Dayton, but I'm really looking forward to meeting you guys, okay?
I think it's going to be one hell of a good weekend. I mean, when we go to Newark, it's always one great weekend, but I think Dayton is just going to be on it. And it's a shame you're not making it, Martin. It really is, but I understand why.
I know.
But I think...
You can Skype call me if anybody really wants to talk to me, but I doubt that somehow.
Oh, I don't know. Friday night. Do you hear that, boys? Friday night. Okay. I'll say, right, I'd like to say 73s to you all. This is not the end of the podcast, just this section. So 73s, guys.
7-3.
73.
Hi, Mrs. B here. Please sign up to our newsletter. We won't share your data and only send you relevant podcast information. We thank you for your support. 73's Mrs. B.
Hi, this is Colin M6BOY with the news in brief section. But to be honest, not much going on with the build up to Hamvention. News is very, very light this week. So we'll just let you know about at Dayton. There's going to be a AM radio station on 1620 AM providing information on the AM bands for inbound attendees. The low power station will offer traffic, weather, parking and event information to motorists as they approach Xena in Ohio, which is bracing itself for 30,000 visitors over the 3 days of Hamvention. Due to the web of 2-lane roads that serves the Greene County Fairgrounds and Expo Centre, there's also a shuttle bus operation will be in place to alleviate traffic congestion. 1620 AM signal will blanket Xena and will be audible in the surrounding Greene and Montgomery counties, directing approaching attendees to special parking facilities. So obviously tune in your radio, guys, if you're travelling to Hamvention, and catch up the latest news information for now. Mention Hamvention, your ICQ podcast team will be in attendance in the halls, doing what we do, as they say. There'll be 8 of us in attendance: myself, Martin, Edmund, Ed, Chris, Dan, Frank, and Bill will all be in attendance. Sorry, Bill, you've got you there for 2 seconds. How could I forget you? We'll be in attendance wearing our orange polo shirts. You'll clearly be able to identify us. Feel free to stop us and say hello. We'd greatly appreciate you saying hello to us and letting us know what you think about the show. Just while we mention as well, if you can't make it to Hamvention, because I know Yaesu will have the new FTDX101D, and if you haven't caught up with it yet, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ICQ podcast, where you'll be able to see the video we created a few weeks ago at Yaesu, demonstrating that new rig. So if you're interested in it, or as they can't make the show, if you've been at the show and still got questions to ask, hopefully that video may be of help for you. Well, now we head over to our features episode, which is a product review of the WOLFWave Audio Processor. So guys, I hope you enjoy Martin's review, and as I say, hopefully I'll catch up with you at Hamvention in a few days' time. See you soon.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Hi guys, for this episode I wanted to talk to you about the WOLFWave digital audio processing box. Now, this box was sent to us by Richard from SOTA Beams, and I make no excuse about it. It will be going back to Richard. We will not keep it, and we will review it based on what our own experiences are. I've looked at a number of YouTube videos of other people have done and decided that it was pretty pointless me doing another video of the device when it's been pretty much done in the past. Now, the box itself is a little bigger than a packet of 20 cigarettes, for those of you that remember the size. And it's a great little device. Now, I'm going to give you some of the spec on this, but the box itself has got two controls on it, a volume control because there's a 1.5 watt audio amplifier built in. It's got a multifunction rotary encoder, 3 push buttons to adjust various bits and pieces like the menu and the mode and the help key. And it's got a full help system built into it. So if you're out on a hilltop somewhere, you haven't got to take a manual with you because all of the information is on the little display. Now the display is quite small, but in reality it is very, very clear. And yes, I had to wear my glasses, but certainly worked very well for me. The last thing on the top of the box is a LED which flashes green to show you that the audio levels are right level for this to work. If it goes red and starts flashing red, you're overdriving the device. Okay, so nice little device. Now, when I looked at it, I thought, well, what could we do with this? So I took it up to HMS Belfast about a week ago and showed Tim and Chris Howard the box, and they were very, very impressed. Also showed a couple of other visiting hams that popped by the radio station there, and once again, very, very interested. Now, when I say a digital audio filter, this thing is able to have a bandwidth, for filter bandwidth, anywhere from 5 kHz for AM type signals. You can then adjust it all the way down to a bandwidth of 50 Hz. So if you're trying to receive a Morse signal, you can adjust it down to 50 Hz and really just pick out that pure note and none of the rubbish either side. Now, when we were using it, we used it with SSB mode on the rig, and with a 2.4 kHz wide audio channel, you obviously, on a busy band, you quite often get more than one Morse signal in. By reducing the bandwidth and being able to then move the center frequency, you can then actually move this filter onto the Morse signal that you want to hear, which is in many ways pretty damn good. There are very few rigs that I know that can do that, and this is very, very impressive. I think it's a major upgrade for an old rig. Supposing you've got a rig that you bought a few years ago, it's your pride and joy, but it doesn't have any digital audio processing. This is a nice little add-on box that will prolong the life of your rig. And in many ways, it's kind of priced at the cost of about 2 filters, 2 mechanical filters. This particular box is retail price at the moment is £237.50 UK. When I think that a filter for my FT817 was about £130, and you can only put one filter in, this certainly makes it very sensible, because you've got infinite number of filters. You can adjust it for what you actually want, rather than put for argument's sake, a 300 Hz CW filter in, or a 2.4 SSB filter in. This will do both and a hell of a lot more. So price wise, I think it's priced at about two filters, and certainly really well worth doing. The other thing is, because it's an external box, you can move it from one rig to another. So you don't have to just just have it built for the main shack computer. You can use it for portable work by just taking it out and about. Now, this connects into the headphone socket. So if you take a 3.5mm stereo lead from the headphone socket on your radio, plug it into the input of this device. The other side, there is a power socket where you can put low voltage power up it, and you've got a headphone and a speaker output. Now, I use mine with a speaker and the headphones. Work very, very well. And it only draws a very little current, so it wouldn't create too much problems if you were out portable. The device can be run off the USB in the shack, so if you're on the USB, you could plug a USB cable into it, and which would also power it. And the device has a USB socket, as I say, and the device is scheduled for a firmware upgrade in just over a month's time in June 2019. So, kind of lots of nice things about this. I think it's a great device for SOTA and hilltopping, where you need to be out and get the signal in and work them, because obviously time sometimes is of importance if you're trying to do multiple hilltops, or it's cold and you want to get off the hilltop. In my opinion, it's an ideal device to add to an FT817, a Yaesu FT817. Extra filtering really brings that rig into a different light. So certainly well worth a look, I would suggest. So, not only did I manage to run it, but I took it to the Sutton and Cheam Club on Monday night, and about 20 amateurs had a look at it. I don't think any of them said anything bad about it. And I managed to record a little bit of audio at the end, bearing in mind most people are quite reluctant to talk. But Tim, G4YBU, and Paul both had a go and give us their thoughts on this device. I'm at the local radio club here with Sutton and Cheam. Sitting in front of me is Tim, G4YBU, who has kind of hijacked the WOLFWave and given it a really good test. And you're running some interesting signals into the WOLFWave, aren't you, Tim?
Yeah, well, we're having a bit of a play with this new box which Martin brought, which is pretty amazing, really, on CW. And we thought we'd just run some different signals into it. So we're running Morse Runner on a computer.
Right.
And that's putting in, at the moment we're trying to simulate some pile-ups. I think we've had 4 different stations all calling us on a contest, simulated contest sort of exchange. So they're all on slightly different frequencies, and we're using the WOLFWave into a loudspeaker to see if that can pick out specific stations and differentiate them through the pilot. And it's working brilliantly well.
Yeah. It's an interesting piece of equipment. Just about everybody who's been here tonight and seen it working is impressed with what it does, I think is a fair statement. Yeah. Do you want to add any more to that?
I think it's fantastic, because even top-end rigs don't have some of those facilities to notch out all the other adjacent QRM, because you can narrow it way down, and then vary the frequency that you want to listen to. So from that point of view, it's really, really good. And running little pile-ups, even if you've got a mini pile-up on a SOTA site, and it's really useful on SOTA, I would think, this, because often you want to work stations fairly quickly. You don't want to rag chew, you're getting cold on top of a hill. You just want to work the stations and move on. And you do get a mini pile-up, which can cause a few problems. So in this way, you could just notch out, and it really is very selective. I mean, I think it's down to 50 hertz, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I like it a lot. The one thing I've not found yet, and we were just having a discussion about it now, is a notch filter. Now, there might be one in it, I don't know, but we haven't found it yet. But a notch filter, I think, needs to be there for me, because even though you can vary the bandwidth and you can you can look at different frequencies. Sometimes you just need to notch out a specific heterodyne noise or another station or whatever.
Yeah, I think that by varying the width and the centre frequency, you can probably does very similar to a notch filter anyway.
Don't think I'd agree with that totally.
Okay, well.
I know where you're coming from, and I did think about that, but I think we'd need to test it. And if there is a notch filter facility in there,
yeah,
I'd be even keener. But for CW, I can't comment on sideband, but you were running sideband.
Yeah,
earlier,
I run sideband earlier. Yeah, it's great.
And you were really getting it to work well. So for CW, well, I don't think there's anything like it so far that I've experienced.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Really good.
So I'm going to suddenly watch Paul either run out the room or talk to me about this. But Paul, I can't remember your call sign, but come on, you've had a look at it. What do you think?
No, I like it. It's well built, software upgradable, which I always like. Drive headphones or a speaker, and it notches things out from my perspective, or selects them very nicely. It's intuitive to drive. I've been fiddling around with it without the manual, and it looks as though they've got other things planned for it because of the way the software and the buttons are set up. So yeah, very nice.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly good piece of equipment. And so thanks, guys. Unless Julian's got anything to say? No. Well, thanks, guys, for giving us a quick overview on that one. Well, as you can see from Paul and Tim's discussion, a great device. Other things that this will do, it has a feature that tries to work out your hearing based on your age and your sex. It knows that your hearing degrades over time, and it will try and set the filters up for you as best as possible. So lots of nice little devices. In standby, it's very, very low current drawn. The voltage required is up to 12 volts, so we can certainly run it with our devices. Fairly low current device, so it's not going to drain your batteries if you're on a hilltop. So all in all, I think it's a great little device for upgrading a radio that you've been very happy with, or for portable work. And don't just think this is only for CW. It works equally well on SSB, where you can trim the size of your bandwidth down to say 1.8 or 1.6 kilohertz, and just get rid of the contest stations either side of you, which often make things very difficult for you to hear. So all in all, a great little device, and I'd like to thank Richard for sending it to us to allow us to have a look at this. I hope this was of use.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
So Dad, the WOLFWave feature there that you've been playing with for the last couple of weeks, generally very positive, yeah?
Very, very positive, Colin. Very, very positive. I can really see that it will fulfill a lot of people's requirements. Certainly for upgrades, upgrading a radio that you've had a while, or even, for portable work. Absolutely great piece of kit.
Yeah, so certainly, guys, hope you've interest there for you. The product was lent to us by Sota Beams in the UK, who agreed to the terms of us being able to review it as we see it, etc. There's no financial compensation. We just get a test piece of kit. They pay for shipment to us and back. We review it as we see it, and obviously let you guys know. So hopefully you found some use there. Well, guys, it's only a couple of days from the release of this show to Hamvention. And 8 of your ICQ podcast presenters will be in attendance. Myself, Dad, Chris Howard, Ed Durant, Edmund Spicer, Dan Romanick, Bill Barnes, and Frank Howell will all be there in our lovely new orange t-shirt. So make sure you come up and say hello to us, won't you? Guys, sometimes people like to give us donations at shows. Do us a favour, pop it in an envelope with a note alongside it with your call sign, name and any message. And obviously we'll give you a thanks on the next show. Particularly, you might be interested to catch Edmund and Martin. They both looked at that new Yaesu FTDX 101D rig we mentioned in the last episode. If you want their opinions on what they saw, feel free to grab them. I'm sure they'll be happy to tell you about them. If you're not going to the show, or if you've been to the show and you're still wanting more information, make sure you check out our video on YouTube, won't you? Certainly it's been very popular, and you're more than welcome to check out that video there for you, and make sure that's something of use to you. Talking about donations, we'd like to thank Chuck Chivers, Victor Echo 3, Victor Sierra Alpha, and Bill Hester, November 0 Lima Alpha Juliet, for their very kind donations to this episode of the ICQ podcast. As we always say, their episode donations keep us advert free. If you'd like to do your bit for the next episode, just go along to icqpodcast.com/donate, where, as we say, anything you send our way to show your value for the show is always greatly appreciated. Remember to keep in touch with us on the Facebook group, and also sign up for our newsletter at icqpodcast.com. We'll try and get some pictures posted and some stuff from Hamvention as well, so you can see what's been going on there next weekend as we work from there. We'd like to thank Chris Howard, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin Rothwell, Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Frank Howell, Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Dan, the Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform, for joining us on the roundtable there with Martin M1MRB. Right, I think that's gone through all our notices we need to do. So the question though is, Dad, our next episode will be recording while you're in Chicago. So how's Mrs. B going to get a chocolate biscuit for a cup of tea?
Well, I think she might have to get our daughter down to do that one. Hi. It's about time Wendy did something, your sister. No, not a problem. It's solved. Mrs. B's quite up for me going. I think she's quite able to get rid of me for a few days.
Yeah, but she's getting rid of you, but giving you to me to look after. So I've got all the responsibility to make sure you come back in one piece, which is
yeah. But it's no problem. No, all jesting aside, she knows how important this is to me doing this Dayton trip, and she's very supportive on that one. So. And equally, she's going to be with us later in the year when we go to Newark. So she's kind of on the periphery now of the podcast, which is quite nice. And, it's keeping it in the family, isn't it?
Well, true. The only problem is our chocolate biscuit fund's having to rise a little bit. The more she gets involved, the more chocolate biscuits we need to buy. But, hey, it's a cost worth paying for. So I'm going to let you head off and make Mum a cup of tea and a chocolate biscuit. And I'm going to wish all our listeners a wonderful 73s. Those of you going to Dayton, safe travel. Look forward to seeing you there. And everyone else, we'll catch up with you all in a fortnight's time. See you then.
73.
73.